Hello again, and welcome into episode 4 of my interactive tutorial. If this is the first time you're watching any of these episodes, this entire tutorial is interactive. So what that means is you can go to the workshop, there's a link in the description of the video, download this park, and follow along as I build this dome today. The previous episodes, in episode 1, we covered just your pure basics of building. Building on the grid, building a very simple structure. We went over some of the hotkeys, and we also discussed ways to remove and add scenery to different buildings. Episode 2, we built some custom walls out of windows. Episode 3, we built a custom roof and a custom spire. And today, as you can tell, and as I mentioned, we will be building a custom dome. So this is our finished product. And you'll see all the stages of the process here. This is probably one of the techniques that people are probably more aware of. I know that Silverette has done a tutorial video on this as well, but hopefully having the opportunity to build as you watch the video will help sort of learn the process. So this was one of the trickier things for me to learn in the game when I first picked it up, and it's probably one of the more versatile things you can use. So you don't just have to use it for domes, you can use it for tons of different things like circular objects, combining pieces together in interesting ways. So but we'll do a pretty simple dome here. So I accomplished that finished product with just these pieces. So again, you can do a lot more detail, you can do a lot more variety, but you don't have to. Again, same thing as in episode 3, have a grid piece with this wooden column attached to it to pull our pieces from. So the very first thing we use is this extra small half circle piece. And I'm gonna grab the color first. So that's the color. And there we go. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is create an outline of the dome to follow. Now there are some domes that start flat like this, but most typically have that kind of an angle start to them. So we're gonna go there, and then we're just gonna, every time we move a piece out, we're gonna adjust it 15 degrees. And then we wanna move it down. Just line those edges up. 15 degrees again. And again. Now this is something where I'm doing this for simplicity's sake, but depending on the size and scale of the dome you're trying to build or recreate, you might have to turn the angle snap off and just do it by eye, and continually tweak the curve of the dome. But for this example, this is going to work just fine. Okay. So that's our step 1, our very basic dome shape. You can tell that if you look at this curve and you copy it over to the other side, you're going to have a nice rounded dome. So step 2 is doing a similar process to what we did in episode 3. Copy that around. And actually, I'm going to tweak this very carefully because the way I have this positioned relative to the pivot point is slightly off to the left, and so it made this piece slightly to the right. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to select these pieces here, and I'm going to try to make them centered as best I can. Doesn't have to be exact because you won't really notice it once the dome is completed, but that looks pretty close. Okay, so again, make sure you're on your 4-meter grid height just because it's easier to copy it around. Yeah, that's a lot better. Deselect that grid piece, and then we want to use Control to select these arc shapes. And Oh, I didn't grab that one, but it's okay. You can do the same thing with an individual piece. And I was way off anyway. Here we go. Okay. So I'll take that. There we go. Okay, so I fixed that. That is now in the correct place. And all we're going to do now is we don't want to select the grid piece at all. We want to just get the stuff that is non-grid. So we're going to grab these art shapes. It gives us the advanced duplicate and advanced move option. So Control X. And now what we have is the pivot point is centered here for these art shapes. We'll go like that. And then select all the shapes again. And 15 more degrees. So what that does is it basically gives us the ribs for the dome. You know, the actual structural aspect of the dome that supports the weight of the pieces in between. Now, what I find is easier to do, instead of trying to go around and fill all these in individually, what we're going to do to get to step 2 here is delete all these other pieces. So we'll see if I can... I'm never that great at multi-select and delete. Let's see if we can do it here. Okay. And similarly to episode 3, we're going to use a piece to fit in between here. And I'm actually going to use a different piece because it'll end up in the final design. But all you need is basically one of these beams. So I'm going to use this 2-meter beam here. So we'll bring it up to here. And you'll see again, if I bring it to the edge and just use the angle snap, it's not going to have the right angle. So we got to find something in between. So I'll bring that to the edge here. So what I want is I want the intersection on this side to look the same as it does here. So I'll take the angle snap off and just slowly bring it in. Now you'll notice, so I'm going to overcompensate a little bit. I'm going to go further than I want because now by rotating it, we've come outside of that gray area as well. And then just keep tweaking it a little bit. And again, I'm probably being more precise than you need to be, but it's helpful, I think. The less imprecise it is here, the less stuff you have to kind of fix later, I think. Okay, so that's our center point. So now we know anything that we pull off of this piece is going to fit in between there and be at the correct angle. So we're going to use art shapes here because we want it to be somewhat of a metal dome. And we'll start with this extra small rectangle, which is down here in your available pieces. And then we're going to turn angle snap back on. Rotate it there. Rotate it there. And it should fit pretty nicely in between those two. Bring it up to that level. And then we're just going to go 15 degrees. It's okay if there's a little bit of a line there. Again, you're not gonna be looking at it that closely. And 15 degrees again. And then you just continue this process until the entire thing is filled in. But as you get to the top here, you have to switch art shapes because this one's obviously too long to fill in the gaps. so it's going to stick out the sides. Actually, this one might be okay. I think we're going to be okay here. Yeah, we'll switch to the square piece just to be safe. So we'll go to the small square. And there. Same thing. Go 15 degrees. Get it somewhat lined up. And then the final one here is not going to matter if it's kind of clipping through the edges, because it'll get covered up by everything else. Okay. So that finished product is step 3 here. Now, adding some additional detail, and this is where your creativity can come in. A couple things to note. So the larger, just like that kind of spire, the larger your dome is, the larger your circumference and diameter is going to be. So this one is pretty small, and so as you come down, you want whatever your flat surface is to be the same width as the base of your dome. You can provide some embellishments, like with this piece here. If we try to use that piece, it's a little bit too big, and what's going to happen as we copy it around, they're going to clip through each other. So instead of using that, I'm going to go to the 1 meter, and I want to make it look kind of like it's like a stone or something, even though this is a wooden piece. This is a technique that I used a lot in my Paris project. I used a lot of different materials and stuff, but put them in similar colors so that they kind of looked like stone. So we've got a little bit of detail there. More often than not, domes will have sort of a like lip on them, like this. So we've got a little bit of a lip there. I might make it a little smaller. Again, this is where your creativity comes into play. So we've used this piece. We've used those 3. Now we're going to use that piece to sort of create a flat surface. So again, this goes back to episode 3. So this is your pillar base, where, anytime you look at an object, like look at all of the faces of it and think what purpose could it serve. So this is a nice small square shape. It has a nice stone texture to it. It's the correct dimension for what I'm looking for. And we'll just tie it together like that. And I might go a little bit shorter, actually, if you look at the finished product. Tuck it up here. Okay. And then maybe bring this out a little bit to give it some more of a border. From this piece, I'm going to select and go to Windows. And we're going to use this castle window here. And I'm going to make it the same color. Now, when I was making this for the tutorial, I tried out a handful of windows until I decided on this one. But this one, like I said, was the correct size, to copy around, and it, fit in with the general theme as well. So maybe I'll tuck this back a little bit. And then all I do from here to complete the bottom is just copy this down. And this is again where you can kind of do some stuff creatively. Like, I think that looks fine there. But if you wanted to maybe have it look a little bit more finished and look like the base is a little bit more substantial than the top part, you can do, you can just kind of tweak it however you want. So we'll bring it down. And now it's a little bit thicker on the bottom than it is on top. Okay, so we're at this stage now of completion. And then from here, what I typically like to do is take this piece, and if you hit Shift and M, it's going to keep it in the same position but allow you to move up. And I'm going to move it up above there and delete these extra pieces. And then the reason I'm keeping this is because I'm going to copy some details down to give it a little bit of an ornamentation on top. But I don't need it for now. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing. Again, 4 meter grid height. Rotate it around. I'm going to delete one of those just because it makes it easier to deselect it when you select the whole thing here. So I'll deselect the grid piece. Now I've got the ability to do the duplicate in advanced. So Control, so now we're at this stage. So Control X. Copy it around there. Control X again. Control X again. And now it's complete. Now, if you want to be mindful of part count, you know, I could have deleted one of these ribs here, and it would have, you know, it would have saved me from duplicating these pieces along the edges. But just for the tutorial, we'll just keep it the way it is. All right, so now I can probably delete that, and we're going to pull our ornamentation from this piece since we know it's directly centered above the dome, because we want to hide some of the stuff that's up here. So these Christmas ornaments are a great way to do that. Again, not anything original by me. I've seen Silverette use those a ton in some of his stuff, but they're a great way to sort of give the detailed look that you see in a lot of these types of structures. I'm going to change the colors. Maybe we'll do like a more of a gray color so it fits in a little more. And I'm going to turn this upside down. Sink it in just to hide some of that mess. And I don't know, we'll do about that. Yeah, I'll do that piece. And then, where's the small pine cone? Oops. Okay. And then you can, you know, you could adjust this if you wanted to, however you think it looks best. But that is your finished dome. And now you can see, even though some of this stuff was, you know, almost the exact width of the dome base, that it still kind of overlaps a bit. So if that bothers you, you can either put some ornamentation here to hide it, or you can just come in and tweak and fine tune them and give yourself a clean edge. So that's stuff that I typically do, but it's definitely not necessary at all. So yeah, so that is your basic sort of dome structure. And again, this same technique can be used in a variety of ways. You know, it doesn't have to be just for domes. It can be for any sort of round building you're trying to accomplish. And again, you can do any amount of detailing, any size that you want, but the general process is here. And that's the whole point of this tutorial, is that you get to do it, you know, step by step along with me, and then hopefully it teaches you the base skill, where then you can go off and do whatever creative thing you want to do within the game. So in episode 5, we're going to be spending some time going into the path tool and learning about ways you can manipulate the paths system to create domes and steps that normally would not be available to you in the game. I know that the path tool is a common frustration for a lot of people, and certainly There are times that it frustrates me, but in terms of getting the end result you're looking for, the tools that I'm going to show you in the next episode, I think for most of the stuff you would want to do, you should be able to accomplish using these tools. So if you haven't had an opportunity to download the park and follow along, be sure to check that out. The link to the workshops in the description, and I will see you guys in episode 5. Thanks for watching.